What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today, we are going to continue and round out the Practice to Permanent series, talking all about what should I expect or how do I handle my worst rounds? How do I handle maybe something's going really great during my round, and when's the floor going to fall out? When are things just going to start going bad? But before we dive into that, of course, got to ask the most important question of the day. How are you doing today, Tom? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
In this Practice to Permanent series, we have talked about how working on your form and then throwing drivers could lead to a host of issues. What happens when you're practicing too much on the putting green? And towards the end of that, we especially talked about what happens, let's say, the week leading up to a tournament when you spend so much time on the putting green trying to work out those kinks in your putt. And does that actually affect you in a positive way? Or does it have some drawbacks to it? But recently, and by recently, I guess it's been a month or two now, we put out a video here on the channel called The Rule of Thirds. And that was the idea that every time that you play golf, it falls into one of three categories. You're either falling into the worst performances you have, your lower 33%, your middle ground, or you're falling into your great rounds, which is that top 33% of your ability to perform. Now, realistically, lots of people think that when they're performing in their middle ground or their high ground, they actually just eliminate that lower third category altogether. And when they see themselves playing in the middle ground, they like to believe that that is their worst and that the great rounds are their best, and that this unrealistic dream of what is beyond what could be is their great potential. That's their ceiling that they can go towards. And so having this discussion, especially over in the Birdie Fam, which is my Patreon, where we bring a community of disc golfers together looking to improve one stroke at a time, the conversation really has been centered around this rule of thirds. And as I've met some of you out on the course, I've even heard you using this terminology of, oh, that round was definitely a lower thirds round, or, oh, that round I played amazing golf, and honestly, I just have to accept I'm playing in my top thirds right now. I do think that it's pretty healthy for us to think about rounds in that perspective. And so I appreciate that y'all are taking that video to heart. But what I want to address today is what happens when you find yourself playing consistently in that middle to lower thirds part of your game. How do you deal with that? And then we want to round it out with talking about what happens, let's say, when you have birdied 4, 5, 10, 15 holes in a row, it feels like, and you're telling yourself the entire round, all right, I'm playing good golf right now, but eventually, I mean, the bogeys are going to pile up. I know they are. I want to start by addressing the concept of playing in your lower half or in that lower thirds, and when you find yourself playing there consistently. I'm going to use real examples from the Birdie Fam group because I really appreciate that they are encouraging and pushing themselves to grow, and it honestly serves as really good feedback for me to know what viewers are struggling with, and so how we can address those. So in this example, we have one of our players, we'll call him Bob. At the time this comes out, Bob will have played a tournament at a course that he is decently familiar with. Now, Bob, in playing one of his practice rounds, found himself shooting a personal best a couple under par. And yet, when he went and played a tags match at that same course, he shot a little over par. Bob's question, how do I know that my little bit over par was my middle ground, if not my low ground? And then should I look at the couple under par where I set a personal best? Is that my like great? Because it didn't really feel great because I definitely had a few easy putts that I could have made. The first rule that I want to talk about when it comes to course management and course expectation is simply this. You are always going to leave strokes out there. It doesn't matter whether you're Paul Macbeth or you are Robbie Crawford. I'll put him on the other end of the spectrum because there is a pretty sizable gap between those two players. No matter who you are, when you're playing disc golf, no one is going to walk off the course telling themselves, wow, I think I actually just did everything absolutely perfect. It was so easy. I made all of my putts. I put all of my drives where I wanted them to be, and all of my upshots were absolutely perfect. Even when we go to Paul Macbeth, who has had two 18 under rounds in competitive play, he had pars in both of them. So realistically, if we take the same mentality that lots of viewers like you are going to hold when it comes to, oh, I shot 4 or 5 under par, but I missed a lot of easy putts, and if I would have made those, I could have been 8, 9 under par. Here we go. Well, then Paul Macbeth shouldn't celebrate his 18 under round because realistically, If the dude wasn't washed, he'd be 19 under par. JK, don't hate me, Paul. I'm not coming at you for that, but that's what it is. This is the AM mentality that we are bringing to course expectation when you're out there scoring. I think there are a couple factors when it comes to determining whether you have a round playing in your average or whether you're playing below average, and realizing how to sort the rounds that you've played inside of those averages, I think actually gives you healthy progress tracking to know where you can keep going, or if you are improving, and if not, where you can improve based on how that round slots in. I want to give a shout out to a guy named Wes, who is one of our moderators inside of the Birdie fam, and he described it like this: there's a mental set of thirds and a physical set of thirds. Those physical set of thirds are your ability to execute the shots that you are looking to execute. That can be, is my backhand timing working correctly? Am I'm throwing my forehand approaches? Are things coming off my hand as smooth as I need them to be? Am I hitting the lines, hitting the gaps that I'm looking for? Am I consistently releasing the putt? Now that's one set of thirds. The other set of thirds is our mental set of thirds, which comes down to our ability to make smart decisions while we're on the course. Did we choose the right shots and the right discs? I think back to even when I was caddying for Brody, and he's walking through some of the decision making, and he's stepping up, looking at a hole, saying, hey, I have to scramble from this point. Do I want to throw a turnover roach here? Or do I want to grab like an overstable raptor and throw a forehand? And then after he'd thrown the shot, telling himself, man, I chose the wrong disc. I made the wrong thing. He executed the line to a degree of what he could do with the disc he chose, but having the wrong mental decisions can also sort of break things up. Another factor when it comes to that mental thirds is, how am I dealing with the pressure of playing in competition? If you're playing solo rounds, those mental gymnastics can feel even easier because maybe there's not pressure of anyone coming on, like showing you have to perform for them. But also, if you throw a bad shot, who's to say if you're just like, all right, cool, I'm just gonna throw another one. All right, I did it. Okay, slight execution error, boom, reset, I'm good. Whereas during a tournament or a round with friends, if you shank a shot, you can't necessarily just be like, hey, don't count that one, I'm throwing another one. And if you do, you're either cheating or your friends are gonna look at you like, bro, that don't count. What you doing, man? Now, these two sets of thirds can find themselves sort of crossing like distant partners in the wind when it comes to us playing competitive rounds. You can have a day where you are executing physically and everything seems to be going extremely well, but you're making the wrong decisions, or you're overwhelmed by the fact that, hey, I'm chasing for a lead right now, and now that's leaning into, and I'm not handling that pressure well. Well, that's going to cause you to shift here, which may throw off your physical execution that you're trying to go for. Or you may be physically executing incorrectly while still having a very good grasp on what exactly you're trying to compete for, having the right positive mentality while you're out there on the course. Hey, I believe in myself to make this next putt. I know this is what I need to do. And you're telling yourself and walking through all the right mental things, yet failing on the physical aspect. One of the reasons the pros are the pros is because they are playing pretty much every day and playing high level courses pretty much every day. They have to be able to find that consistency to line those two barriers up. This is why so often you'll see the top players hit that flow state that they talk about, or that idea of, all right, I was just out there vibing on the course. That's gonna lead us to good days that actually feel like lower third days. A great example that I think of for this is this week, we actually wrapped up the Discraft Great Lakes Open, D-Glow, which happens in Michigan, Milford, Michigan, I do believe. And Simon Lizotte ended up winning the event. Spoiler alert, not really a spoiler, that happened like weeks ago by the time this video drops. But Simon ends up winning. And when Simon wins D-Glow, he actually tells himself, after the third round where he shot a piping hot, I believe 11 down, he got interviewed afterwards and they were like, Simon, how are you feeling? Simon, how did it go? You shot an amazing round. And Simon told us, if I'm being honest, things just felt a little off all day, but I was making the right decisions and I was able to execute just enough for it to turn into something incredible. That lets us know that even the top players are walking in and that feeling great, I'm executing the shots that I want. So his physical third, he was more in the good category, but his mental third was so good in terms of the right positive and attitude that it actually brought it into being an overall great round. Take that and someone like AB, who shot an electric round 2, and then he goes into round 3 where he wasn't executing and his mental game struggled because he wasn't executing, and that takes him from having a great round overall, and both of these thirds pull him down into having either what would be considered a good round to a bad round. So I want to say all of that to say, when these thirds are chasing each other and not aligning, know that you're going to have some days where you feel like I'm playing really good golf mentally, I'm in the right headspace, I feel like I'm making the right decisions, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and you're not getting the score that you're looking for, or it doesn't seem to be executing. That is okay to call that round a good round, because we are always looking to improve not only our physical execution state, but that mental thirds as well. And that also means that some days you are going to be executing physically, and yet it just feels completely off because your mental's in the wrong place. And that could bring it from being a great round down to a good round, or vice versa, all the way to the bottom. Now, this is one way to sort your rounds and the ideas and the expectations that you're having. And I hope this is making sense as you are going through looking at and evaluating your play, especially if you're prepping for a tournament. But I want to give one situation or piece of advice that I've seen so many people fall into, and that is, let's say you are playing an event, you're playing a round, and you are through the first 6 or 7 holes. You've played a lot of practice rounds before, you've played a lot of rounds on this course, and you are at a score that you never thought possible. This often happens for a couple of reasons. You've hit 1 or 2 circle 2 putts that you didn't anticipate actually making, so suddenly, oh man, I hit a really long putt on a hole that I normally can't get a look at, and therefore that's a free birdie that I was not expecting. We've never really openly said it, but most of the time an ace is not necessarily a great shot on a hole, because in order to park the basket, you have to usually land short, or if you want to park it behind, that would give it a chance to throw in from distance. But let's say you grab an ace and suddenly the nerves, the adrenaline, everything is just rushing through. And I mean, let's be real, an ace is a free stroke almost guaranteed beyond the birdie that you got while you were on that hole. So when you're in the tournament, when you're playing around with friends, and suddenly you look down and realize on the scorecard, or you're putting 2 and 2 together of, wow, I am playing really excellent golf right now. But that's not me. That is not who I am. I am not the guy who normally plays this well on this course for this reason. Sound like any of you watching? You ever been telling yourself you're this while you're out there on the course? Where this becomes a trap is that because we are automatically discounting what we're doing, instead of even saying, hey, I'm playing great golf right now, let's keep playing great golf, we instantly turn to this feeling of fear or doubt, where we tell ourselves, at one point the bogey's gonna come. At one point the floor is gonna fall out beneath me and I'm just gonna plummet, and all of the good that I have made during this round is just gonna go away. Sure enough, what happens? I throw a putt, it hits a cage, it pops up, and it rolls all the way down the hill, and suddenly this birdie look that I had is turning into a bogey look. I have a shanked tee shot because I just feel like I'm in a flow state, and oh no, I've hit first available on this 400-foot par 3, and I know I don't have 400 feet of distance. Man, this is where it happens. This is where everything falls apart. I want to talk about this idea that we've mentioned before on the channel, but it's been a while. And that is that I think if we're going to talk about our rounds in terms of thirds and where they're fitting, where they're falling in, I want that analysis to come at the end of the round. If I'm reading a book, and let's say I am 50% of the way through the book, while I can have assessments on what the book is, how I feel about the book overall, there are plot twists and turns that are waiting for me later on in the book. So it is a poor decision to give an overall rating to that book before I finish reading it. And the same thing goes for your rounds. If you are trying to live in the middle of the round and you're playing really well and you're doing really well and you're telling yourself, but it's going to fall out. Oh, it's going to go bad here. Oh, this is not it right here. you're letting the story of that round write itself before you even get the chance to get to that page. So what do the best golfers always say when they're playing, when they're in that flow state? That's right, they're executing one shot at a time. We're thinking about the next shot in front of us. I'm not on hole 12 thinking about the fact that I usually can birdie holes 12 through 14, but 15 kind of gives me fits, because if I don't birdie 12 through 14 and then I get to 15, that I already know I'm in trouble, and I've set up the story to be things are going to fall apart, and I already fell short on this hole, man, what's going to happen on 15? When we live shot by shot, when we focus shot by shot, you'd be amazed at how much easier it feels walking up a fairway when I tell myself, hey, I just got to make this putt. Awesome, I made this putt 100 times. Bang, I make the putt. Then I walk up to the next shot, and then I'm like, all right, cool, time to throw this drive. Let's throw this drive. The pressure of the shot, the pressure of the situation simply becomes that moment, rather than leaning into and adding all the excess pressure of you believe that you may be playing beyond your capabilities because you're playing a really good or a great round, as well as the pressure that you're going to fall apart and you're going to choke it, because that's who you are. You are a choke artist. These are all very negative thoughts, negative ideas that I don't want you focusing on as a player. So let's take the story of the round, let's take the analysis of the round, and let's move it all towards the post. And then let's say you're living shot by shot, you're playing really well in the front half, and then things do get a little hairy in the middle. Awesome. When we analyze the story of the round afterwards, that begins to look at, okay, so things started falling apart in the middle. Why? I get to ask the questions afterwards. People don't critique books without asking questions. So as I'm looking at this, was I drinking enough? Did I need a snack? It was a long, hot day that pretty much all of us are dealing with. That's why I'm inside shooting today. So was fatigue setting in? Did I need to pack more snacks while I was on there? These are all questions that I can ask and have realistic answers for, versus, oh, things started going bad just because that's who I am. If you want to believe that you're a bad player, sure, I think that's fine. But that's really not going to help us in the journey to improvement and the journey to play our best golf out there. Whereas I look afterwards and I just play shot for shot for shot for shot for shot, I can deal with all the emotions and expectations when the round's over. With all that being said, that felt a little preachy, and honestly felt like we were talking about a little more than just disc golf there for a little bit. And I think that's okay, because here on the Robbie C channel, we care about you enjoying this sport even more, and I never want disc golf to be a thing that you get off work from the hard day that you've been working, grinding, in class, whatever it may be, whatever you're bringing to the course. I want to do my job to help you love this sport and enjoy this freedom or this activity just a little bit more while you're out there. And most of the time that happens when we can play a little bit better, but having the right expectations and using every round that we play by analyzing it afterwards, seeing how our thirds lined up, not living in the story of the round in the middle of the round and analyzing that story afterwards, I think are all helpful keys so that we can continue to build the roadmap to success to turn you into the player that you're looking to be. So if this is helpful, let us know in the comments below. And if there's certain aspects of this even that you're like, hey, I'd love to hear you dive into that a little more, once again, feel free to use the comments below. I read every comment that comes through. I spend a lot of time reading, trying to respond to comments, responding to messages, things like that, because you guys are the source material for what people need help with. And I want to be able to address videos and topics that you guys actually care about. And so I hope this is helpful. In the meantime, as always, I want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for making this at all possible. I got to meet a couple of people here in the shop today that watched the channel, and one of them even said, getting to play disc golf for a living sounds like the dream. And y'all really do help me be able to live the dream every day by your support. Continue to do this. So thank you so much. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.